Hi, my name is Evan Cans, and my research project is on the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, and more specifically, whether the lack of implementation of certain states has hurt the Affordable Care Act's success. President Obama ran his presidential campaign with the promise of health care reform at the federal level. In 2010, President Obama achieved that goal with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. Like most things in politics these days, there is an extreme partisan divide. In fact, not a single member of the Republican Congress voted in favor of the Affordable Care Act. As you can see at the state level, especially in implementation, states have treated the Affordable Care Act differently, and that's also directly based on partisan differences. States that are ran by Democrat leadership are much more likely to implement every facet of the ACA, whereas states led by Republican leadership have often chosen to only implement part of the ACA or basically none of it. The two main things the ACA sought to do was to make states expand Medicaid and also to establish state-based health insurance. As mentioned, states had different discretion in how they chose to fully implement the Affordable Care Act. For instance, states could either set up their state-based health insurance exchanges or rely on the federal government to do so, or a mix of both. Additionally, Medicaid expansion was not made mandatory. The federal government offered to pay for Medicaid expansion, but states were still not made to do so. My theory is that states that chose not to implement the ACA fully are in much worse shape and have hurt the overall success and reputation of the Affordable Care Act. I believe that the percentage of insured citizens and insurance premium prices, along with number of insurance providers, can help tell the story as to whether the ACA has been successful and whether or not the state's lack of implementation has been a factor in this. A great deal of scholarly literature exists in regards to the Affordable Care Act, most of it dealing with whether or not the act has been successful. The ACA and healthcare in general has been a good display of American federalism at work. It's a great importance on the shared governance and cooperation between the federal and state governments in order to achieve success. The federal government left a lot of decisions up to the states, but there were still incentives such as money for Medicaid that the federal government could exert its influence on the states. The United States Department of Health and Human Services declared that the basis for state-based insurance exchanges was a way that small businesses and consumers could shop for coverage in a way that provided a lot of transparency, a lot of benefits, and overall quality. The goal was to increase competition among insurance, increase transparency, and ultimately increase efficiency. Medicaid expansion was such a big part of the ACA because it was seen as a way to quickly and effectively provide health care to already complement state-administered programs. As mentioned, the ACA had a strong partisan divide, and the day after its passage, 27 different states filed suit challenging the mandate to require Medicaid expansion, which hence led to the ability of states to have discretion in that decision. And that decision has played out in an extremely partisan way, where Democrats have implemented it for the most part, and for the most part, Republicans have chosen not to fully implement it. I chose to do a comparative analysis of states and their implementation of the ACA, and I divided it into three groups. The groups consisted of a group that has both expanded Medicaid and set up state-based insurance exchanges, states that have done one or the other, and states that have done neither. Each state had a uninsured rate before the passage of Obamacare, somewhere between 15 and 20%, and that's why I chose to compare the percentage of citizens insured and how that's changed since Obamacare has been put in place. Also, the insurance premiums, which is based on the average 40-year-old non-smoker in the biggest city of the state and the second least expensive plan, and also the number of insurance providers in the state. The data was taken from a Gallup poll in 2016 and also various works on the Kaiser Family Foundation. Here is the first general table of some of the research or some of the data that I collected. As you can see, we have the percentage of uninsured citizens in 2013, and then again that number in 2015, and then also the change in that number, and then also whether or not states chose to expand Medicaid or state-based exchanges. This slide shows the table divided in between the three groups that I created, and as you can see, the percentage change in uninsured citizens was positive for each group, but there was a difference. The states that chose to expand Medicaid and create state-based exchanges had almost double the average amount of change in uninsured citizens, as did the states that chose to do neither. Here you see the second general table that I created, and here we see the premium increase from 2016 to 2017 in the largest city of each state, and also the number of insurers in 2017. As you can see again here, states that chose to both expand Medicare and set up state-based exchanges had a far less average premium increase from 2016 to 2017, and on average have a lot more competition and a lot more choice of insurers. Conclusions. I conclude that the Affordable Care Act has achieved its main goal, which was decreasing the number of uninsured citizens in America. No matter if states chose to implement fully the ACA, they still saw, for the most part, a decrease in uninsured citizens. However, states that chose not to expand Medicaid and set up exchanges are seeing much less success. Those states that have done so have seen less uninsured citizens, more providers, and additionally lower average premiums. And one final thought is the number of uninsured citizens decreases regardless of ACA implementation, which tells you that it is achieving that goal. However, the goal is seen much more when states choose to fully implement the law. I have not fully completed the research for this project. I'd like to find a way to quantify how many more citizens would be insured if states fully implemented the ACA. And additionally, I'd like to see what the connection between Illinois, Alabama, and Tennessee is. Each of these states had a huge increase in premium. And Illinois, even though they chose to expand Medicaid and set up state-based insurance exchanges, they still saw a 48% rise in average premiums from 2016 to 2017. One thing I found in the literature that may point to this is lack of providers. Tennessee and Alabama have very few providers, and Illinois actually has a decent amount, but Blue Cross and Blue Shield controls about 3/4 of Illinois' coverage, which kind of skews the results of how many providers are available. Some of my final thoughts. Measuring the success of the Affordable Care Act's goals doesn't really tell the whole story. Yes, more people are insured than ever, but there's certain parts that people are angered about that you don't really see in data, such as deductibles are very high or co-insurance payments. Also, you're not allowed to use the doctor of your choice in many cases. Ultimately, insurance companies are for-profit companies, and if they continue to lose money, premiums will continue to rise. And overall, the lack of competition and the number of insurers dropping out has been the main reason for premium hikes and could continue to do so in the future.